So welcome everyone for the session on youth strategies to enhance WAAS Global Impact. So this session will explore the ways to enhance intergenerational communication within WAAS and between WAAS and the external world in order to enhance its global impact. So the panel aims at arriving to concrete project proposals to be recommended to WAAS Board of Trustees. Today we have 5 panelists. So we have Luvuyo MADASA, Dora DAMJANOVIC, Carlo LUCIANI, Jana AMIN, and Samantha MANAUSA. Welcome everyone. And one discussant, Professor Stefan BRUNNHUBER. Thank you for being with us. Hi. So after the speeches, the floor will be open for discussion. Please, those who want to contribute with comments in the second part of the panel, so the part for the open discussion, do raise your hands so that you can be called on to contribute. Now I'm giving the floor to the first panelist. Luvuyo, please start.
Molweni, good evening. Thank you very much to Marta and the team that has assisted with us getting ourselves ready for this evening. My contributions or opening remarks for this evening's engagements will cover 2 broad questions that I hope our discussions will help in coming out with recommendations. And then in the second point, we'll also then dig deeper into sub-themes. So one of the main considerations in preparing for this evening's discussion, evening in South Africa, I should say, I think we are representing several different time zones. But one of the main conversations or reflection points I had was myself and bringing my personal identity to this conversation. And from that perspective, having participated in, listened in on, and reflected on several of WAAS's engagements, one of the questions I'm hoping we will discuss tonight is how can the community itself, WAAS, create an enabling environment to better facilitate alignment between its organizational interests and our goals as young active members. So I think we are bringing ourselves to the conversation. So I think it's worth us considering that perspective. The second point is that in bringing again myself to the conversation, it is in saying that in enhancing the intergenerational collaboration, how do we craft joint initiatives to make use of our understanding on the following perspectives? So there's identity and representation, technology and scalability, influence and reality, and inclusivity and development. So what do I mean by those sub-themes? This evening, I share this platform and journey, not only with fellow panelists from Croatia, Italy, India, Serbia, and other nations represented in our cohort, but I also share this as a young person, trying to make sense of an ever-evolving reality that we are needing to adapt to, that is part and parcel of our fast-moving society. We live in a world that desperately needs to remember to slow down and give ourselves an opportunity to reconnect with ourselves so that we can be more consistent with showing up for one another. And I think this is important both in our personal, private, social, and professional spaces. How do we connect with ourselves so that we can bring that identity and the representation that is not only spoken to as myself as a South African, but any of our other panelists and the identities they bring and the representation they bring to the conversation. Technology and scalability. A bit of a personal anecdote. Some years ago, I came across a book by Timothy Ferriss called The 4-Hour Workweek. The title caught my attention and the book grabbed a lot of my time and attention. And in working through this book, I used all these powerful tools that it shares for all the wrong reasons. And some years later, I found myself frustrated and burnt out and stuck in a system that I had created, but because I hadn't necessarily prepared for it, was churning out problems faster than I could solve them. And I think in this conversation, it will be very important for us not only to understand the scale that is technology and the internet, but with the wrong frame of mind and the wrong inputs, we could very well find ourselves churning out problems at a very exponential rate. So how do we understand the scalability that comes with technology, and bring the right frame of mind to the conversations that help enhance what it is that we're trying to solve for. Influence and reality. We have people and communities who we want to bring these exciting insights back to. How will we capture and translate the many insights and the engagements and things that we learn and communicate them back to those constituencies? Because if we can't communicate what WAAS is to our peers and our communities, then it becomes very difficult for our influence and contributions to make it an adaptable institutions to communities and people who, for whatever reason, aren't part of the conversation this evening. And then lastly, inclusivity and development. So we are all here and we're part of the conversation, and that's at least part of the solution, and that's taken care of to some extent. But the question, a very important question, because time is fast becoming a very scarce resource, how can we align our personal and professional goals to this very journey that we are going on in, at first the junior fellowship itself, and the very many brave, audacious goals that WAAS has as an institution? How do we bring ourselves and our journeys to this conversation so that we can always be a honest and integral representation of the communities we all want to impact in our various different spaces? So those are my opening comments, and more reflections than solutions, but I'm hoping our conversation this evening will help all of us come together with recommendations that can be worthwhile to this evening's conversations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Luvuyo. I'm sure we will come back to the issues that you raised in the discussion. They're very important. Dora, please continue.
Hi, hello everyone, and thank you, Marta, for introducing me. So when we talk about youth strategies to enhance Academy's global impact, I was very, let's say, specific here. So I was really thinking, with help of my colleagues, how to do that. And what came on my mind was, and the main focus of my idea is young fellows. So how to do it? So I think that we should involve youth, specifically young fellows here, in the decision-making processes of Academy and in a global identity of Academy. So that means also communications with other youth organizations. For young fellows and other youth to participate in Academy's work, to be a connection, to be a bridge with other youth organizations. And what does it mean to involve youth in the decision-making processes? So specifically, that would mean to make some young fellows who would be elected, to make them part of a board and to make them part of organizational bodies, so they can directly cooperate with other members of Academy, older generations, and that we can make this cooperation, that we can make this, remove the gap and make a cooperation between old and young generations in a way that young people learn from older members. They learn from their experience, they learn from their knowledge, but at the same time, provide them with a lot of new, fresh ideas that older generations do not have or are not familiar with, since we simply live and we were simply born in a different age. So the cooperation would be a main focus. But also what I would like to tackle upon is we have to be realistic here. So if we are asking from young people it's really time consuming to put so much effort and so much time in a promotion of Academy and or making identity and connecting Academy with other youth organizations, since it takes so much effort and so much work. Young people who are at the beginning of their career, they don't have money, they don't have time, they're struggling to find the good paid jobs. They should be rewarded in some form of opportunities or finances, because that's just how reality is. Anyway, the most important thing is, in my opinion, just to involve young fellows in public relations, make them part of the boards, and involve them also in a website development, because we know in today's modern society, everything is on social media, and who knows better about social media than young people. And just the promotion, communication with other organizations outside of the academy, that would be the best solution and the strategy, in my opinion. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you, Dora. Very concrete ideas. That's great. Okay, to you, Carlo.
Yes, thank you very much, Marta, and also I want to thank Luvuyo and Dora for their amazing contributions. And actually, they have many interesting ideas that I also elaborated in a similar way. So I would start saying that it is not by chance that today we are discussing how we can improve the global image of the World Academy, because we see this great potential of WAAS, and I believe that we all think that it can and should be elevated. But I don't want to stress too much the attention on this immense potential that the World Academy has. I want to stress the revolution that we have lived in the past year with this pandemic, especially for human relationships. And in this year, I have felt that people have this necessity to connect, to share, and to discuss. And people want to put their energies together to find solutions, especially for those long-term objectives that Luvuyo mentioned, which are, for example, to improve the environment. And I'm not only referring to the natural world, but also to the social environment that needs to be improved, and that needed also a response in this year where we are all separated, where we are all far away, and where technology comes in to help us. So how can we find those solutions? I think the starting point would be to have a purpose and to share it with the people that surround us. In this sense, WAAS has this unique opportunity to create stages for ideas, for thoughts, strategies to deal with the many problems we're facing today. And I believe that we as youth have this great chance to collaborate with the most brilliant minds in the world, and that we should really focus on taking the most of it and creating more bridges between the youth and professionals. So I think to enhance WAAS's global identity, I think the World Academy should continue attracting talents, and especially youth, to keep up with the fast changing world we're living in. And as Dora said, we understand very well the world of social media. People may not like it that most of the discussions are being done there, but the world is changing in this direction. We should just go with the flow and use this opportunity also to strengthen this stronger possibility of communicating with the whole world. So in my outline of the speech, I was mentioning to foster collaborations and projects with universities to attract young people. Why? Because before going to university, I never heard of the World Academy, and this was how I got in contact. But I was lucky, let's say, to have my university with a link to the World Academy. But I believe that if we want to have longer reach to young people, that we should focus on this, on collaborations and projects with universities. Also, when speaking about branding and promotion strategies for the World Academy, of course, we can create the most beautiful videos, but if those contents do not reach the right people, in this sense, young people, it's not that effective. And in this sense, I believe that the youth plays a pivotal role in working on this, in collaborating with professionals on how to enhance the WAAS identity. And my last point is about creating open talks or podcasts, which today with, for example, this new app that has come out recently, Clubhouse, I've seen so many people wanting to share, wanting to talk about specific topics. And the World Academy, as I said, has the most brilliant minds inside of it. And it would be a pity not to use similar channels or to follow those directions in order to, increase the stage for new ideas, new collaborations, new projects. So again, to conclude, that I would like to say that if we want to, again, to keep up with the changes that we're facing, we need to take the lead together and strengthen this intergenerational partnership within the World Academy in order to share our purposes. And my name is Carlo, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Carlo. Jana?
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be with you all. Thank you, all the panelists who have already shared their recommendations. I think mine, you will find, hopefully add a little bit to what everyone said thus far. Just kind of, to describe and share a little bit about what I'm bringing to this conversation. I'd like to just quickly introduce myself. So, hello, everyone. My name is Jana AMIN. I'm a 17-year-old Egyptian American advocate for gender parity, girls' education, Muslim women, and youth inclusion. And I'm very passionate about public policy and international relations. And much of the work that I'm doing is focused on the importance of young women at the peacemaking and decision-making tables and how to get young women in those spaces. And I think this is kind of one of the areas where we as junior fellows and young people within the WAAS community can really kind of help create impact. And so kind of one of the first questions I'd like to explore today, similar to that of some of the other questions my panelists have raised, is as junior fellows, how and why must we take advantage of WAAS's many resources? In my mind, we as junior fellows have our own unique expertise, whether it's our lived experiences, whether it's the digital expertise of living in this digital world and growing up with technology at our fingertips. We as young people, and specifically as talented young people with unique skill sets and unique experience working with people on the ground at the grassroots level, we must take advantage of WAAS's many resources, because together, when we kind of pair WAAS and the junior fellows, I think we can find that we can really make tangible many of our goals and dreams and further help create impact in the communities we care about most. I think more specifically as junior fellows, we have so much that we can contribute to the WAAS community, as much as the WAAS community has a lot that can benefit us as well. And so, I would challenge any junior fellows on the call today to really think about, what unique talent and expertise do you have that you can then get in contact with some of the WAAS organizers and members of the administration and, part of the institutionalized organization. And how can you use either your social media expertise or your expertise working with women or your expertise working in the region where you're at with young people? How can you bring that to the table? I think as well that some of the specific ideas that I personally have to enhance youth participation with WAAS is to create a mentorship program of sorts where young junior fellows are paired with older members of the community who perhaps have been, part of the WAAS network for much longer and can thus really help us navigate our first few months as junior fellows. I know from firsthand experience that, once you kind of join the community, it can be hard to navigate exactly who you should be you should be in contact with and what projects you should plug into. And so if we can kind of streamline that process to ensure that all our junior fellows are connected to, senior members of the WAAS community, we can then ensure that, youth participation is being tangibly felt and impacted within the WAAS community. I think also ensuring that, our voices as young people and as junior fellows are amplified within the WAAS community because they are so important and so needed in today's world. Furthermore, I think another specific idea to enhance youth participation with WAAS is to create, a series of joint workshops where all members of the community can join. So it would be something, similar to this, but kind of an open workshop, perhaps on public speaking, personal brand growth, narrative crafting, how to scale your organization or your company, et cetera, and what it means to be, impact driven, especially in the social entrepreneurship space. And so when we can come together within generations and use that intergenerational dialogue to create positive change, I think that's when, the name and essence of WAAS is really amplified and thus, we together are leaving an important mark on the world. And so I would encourage you all today to think of, very specific ideas for how we can engage with the WAAS community to ensure that we are both helping the WAAS network and they are helping us too. Thank you, Marta.
Thank you very much, Jana, for our youngest panelist. Sami, yeah.
Hi, good evening, everyone. It's actually afternoon for me. I think I might be like the one person, but it is just such a privilege to be able to share this panel with the other 4 panelists who are just so inspiring. So, tough act to follow, but I'll do my best. I mostly have a set of concrete ideas rather than like guiding questions. And I think that there'll probably be a little bit of overlap with the other panelists. But yeah, so starting with intergenerational communication within WAAS, I also agree that we should have a mentorship program for the junior fellows. I think that it should be volunteer-based, so nobody feels forced into a relationship. And then I would hope that lots of people want to volunteer. And I think that it could maybe have informal and formal aspects to it where, they could just meet regularly to kind of forge a connection. And it would also just be a way for junior fellows to make networking opportunities with people who could give them a job in the future. And like Dora mentioned, we need money and we need jobs. We're young people. We don't have any experience yet. And I'm going to bring back up the mentorship program towards the end because I want to talk about the journal Eruditia. So just bookmark that. So then in terms of beyond mentorship program, I think that we should do networking events that aren't necessarily related to ideas, even though we're all great at talking about ideas and we all do it very often. We're also people. And I think that there's something to be said about the way that even intellectual connections can be made over non-intellectual conversations. And I just think that if we're talking about boosting fellowship between each other, becoming friends with each other through like a LinkedIn group, rather we have a LinkedIn page, but we don't have a group just for members. And we could have a LinkedIn group that's private, that's restricted to fellows. And it could kind of be like almost a real-time forum for ideas if anybody wants to post or opportunities for jobs or for research. And that would be kind of a real-time way to communicate with each other. We've already kind of talked about this and kind of set this up, but a WhatsApp group for the junior fellows, because there's not that many of us. So I love to just chat in the group chat with everybody, and I would love to get to know you all better through there, through something informal. I think it's just, there's a lot to be said about building community through more informal channels, even though we have a lot of really amazing formal channels at our disposal. And I also think that there's something to be said about like the people speaking on the panel today will likely remain involved with WAAS because we're already committed. We're likely to be the future board members. We should be friends, like we should know each other. We should be involved with each other. It shouldn't be some like cold, sterile environment. Like we will literally work together better if we're friends. And then lastly, under that subheading, I think it would be fun to do like a Zoom meet and greet. I was tempted to call it a happy hour, but then I remembered that there's no way it'll be happy hour for everybody at the same time unless people start drinking at noon. And I think that just a fun, even if it just starts for the junior fellows, if we just did like some semi-regular Zoom hangouts where we could chat with each other, because it's not like, especially with the pandemic, we can all hop on a plane. Like I'm in Boston, I can't just pop over to Italy to say hi to Carlo, you know? So I think that Zoom, it would be fun. And so I guess moving on to communication between WAAS and other organizations. I loved Carlo's idea about collaborating or doing projects with universities. I would like to propose at least discussion of maybe something akin to an ambassador program on college campuses. Like I said, kind of just like a basic brainstorm for now, but I'm just trying to think of like kind of similarly to other people on the panel, like I got involved with WAAS during undergrad, but it was because I was working for Winston Nagan. Hi, Winston. I know I can see you on the participant list. And I don't know how I would have ever heard of this amazing organization that I care about so much if it wasn't for that personal connection. And so I think we need to ask ourselves, what can we do to make a random college student in many different countries want to join WAAS? What is the appeal that we can provide to them? And so an ambassador program could maybe be like the step before being a junior fellow, or it could almost be like a pipeline. I'm not sure how that squares with the WAAS bylaws, but like I said, just wanted to bring up kind of a ground idea. And then editorial boards. This is what I'm very excited to talk about. I have been in contact with Gary Jacobs to talk about reconstituting the editorial board for Eruditio. He has mentioned it to the Board of Trustees and he has gotten their approval. They're gonna talk about it the second week of March, I believe he told me. This I think would be a really good way to involve junior fellows in the decision-making processes by literally giving them creative autonomy over one of the journals, and not fully. But Gary has been very adamant that junior fellows be involved not only in formulating kind of the reconstitution of the journal, but in its management after the fact. So this will require a lot of things. We need to develop and concretize our publication strategies and systems. We need to literally create an editorial committee and bylaws and decide who's doing what and why and when. We need to recruit and appoint all of the positions for the editorial committee. And then there's about 1 million other tasks that also need to get done. If anybody listening in right now wants to be involved, please reach out to me because, like I said, Gary really wants this to be driven by the junior fellows. And junior fellows could serve on the editorial committee itself, doing editing, doing proofreading, etc. And I think that would be a really good way to give junior fellows some experience as well, because I don't know, like, how do you get on a journal if you've never been on a journal? You kind of need that, like, dipping your toe in the water. And I think that Eruditio would be a really great way to do that. Bringing back up the mentorship program, Gary suggested that as a way to liven up Ereditio, we start doing special editions. I think it would be a fabulous idea to do a special edition that includes collaborations between mentors and mentees. So maybe one year we could have a maybe more formal mentorship program where mentors and mentees collaborate on a project, and then they can finally be displayed in the special edition of Ereditio, because that allows junior fellows not only to work on a project with an esteemed mentor, but then to get a publication, and those are helpful. We need those, just like we need jobs and money, we need publications. I think that prior to the board meeting in a couple weeks, I think that the junior fellows should do like an informal working group, even if it's just over WhatsApp, or we like meet on Zoom a couple times and discuss other ideas that we want to bring to Gary before the board meets again. So if anybody would be interested in meeting sometime over the next couple weeks to talk about this, I would really, really welcome that. And lastly, and this kind of echoes several of our other panelists, everything happens on the internet. I think that there is definitely room for improvement on the design and the function of our webpage and our various social media pages. I do not claim to be an expert on social media marketing and engagement. Like, I study religion, that is so far from my line of expertise, but we have like 1,000 fellows worldwide. Someone out there knows about social media marketing, and that is kind of a joking way to say that, but like, we have just such a ridiculous diversity of intellects and talents, and I know that we can leverage those for social media specifically. I mean, I think it maybe Dora made the point, but like, for me, like I said, I'm not a social media expert, but I am still a millennial who's on social media all the time. So there's something to be said about having the junior fellows be in charge of social media, where there's we have an ingrained comfort in it, just from being in the generation that we are. Oh, and one last suggestion that I have. First off, Carlo, your idea for a podcast series is so great. I wanted to suggest something similar, like a small blog. It could almost, but I actually might think that a podcast would be better. When you said that, I was like, that's a great idea. I think that a podcast series, or a more informal idea communication thing such as a blog, would be a cool way for junior fellows to exercise creative autonomy over the ideas that are coming out of WAAS. It's just another way for them to get experience in writing and producing content. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I have. Thank you all so much for letting me be on this panel with these amazing people.
Very much, Samantha. There are a lot of great ideas today, and a lot of them. I would also like to recommend a few questions for the discussion. Well, most of them have, I mean, the ideas have already been mentioned, but I would just like to point out to a few. So the first one is how to better use the human resources of WAAS to stimulate the academic and professional development of junior fellows. Second, can WAAS be a platform for its youth to enhance their intellectual and executive capacities for their own careers, but also for the implementation of WAAS ideas and projects in the institutions they're associated with, or will be associated with in the future? And finally, what kind of relationship is needed for such an intergenerational collaboration? And regarding these issues, I would like to propose well, as has already been mentioned, a program of mentorship, so to be organized within WAAS for its youth. And this would allow junior fellows to draw upon WAAS fellows' knowledge, experience, and expertise, and progress in the way to make them academically, but also professionally more efficient and prolific. Thank you. And now I'm inviting our discussant, Professor Stefan BRUNNHUBER, to take the word.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, thank you very much, Marta, for inviting me. When I went through this chat and through all the questions, I think you should have invited Thomas and all the others who are much closer to that topic, right? I was listening to your contributions, and I'm really, it's fantastic the ideas you're having out there, from podcasts to mentorship programs to being involved in social medias, etc., etc. From my side, there's hardly anything to add. I know I'm a member of the board of trustees since several years, and I'm a fellow since about 10 years. And I can tell you that when I was your age, I did not have the chance to join such a think tank, right? I had to simply follow the university curriculum as it was and to go through that curriculum. My impression is that being attached to a think tank or academy like WAAS can provide you and both sides, and also us as the board, a bilateral, non-regret, win-win situation. I'm sure, I'm not speaking for the entire board of trustees, but I can surely say that we really need you on board. Just lean in. You know, I'm absolutely sure that we will get up a mentorship program for you to get you on board, you know, with all the connections and networks we have, including being involved in the editorial of the journal or a podcast, etc., etc. I myself, you know, I'm involved in the project of WAAS on sustainability and finance, right? It's called the Tower of Finance Initiative. And I would need you to help me to get that on the ground. Just contact me, right? On the other side, Martha and all the other panelists, if you feel like having, for example, a mentorship, you're looking for a mentorship program, I think Gary and the entire board of trustees is open to do that for you and to set that up. I think we just have to speak with Thomas and Gary and others to set it up in a way that you can benefit from the networks and the experiences we have being 20, 30 years ahead in order to provide you with some experiences that leads you the way. I mean, everything you said was extremely valued and extremely important. And from what I see, there's no resistance to implement that within WAAS and to get you more and more on board. Yeah, but I'm happy to discuss with you specific questions you have, including we should also invite Thomas, for example, who has been involved in this project about youth fellowship and strategies much longer than I do. Martha.
Okay, thank you very much, Stefan. Fadwa, I give the word to you.
Well, I don't know how to start. I'm going to be a bit radical. I don't think mentorship is where we should go. We really don't want you to follow what these old guys who have made so many mistakes do. I think we want to reverse it. We want your innovative input to come in, not to learn the ways of the others and get fixed. I am an anthropologist, so I respect socialization, I respect family, I respect tradition passing on. But like I was just chatting actually, because she refuses to use the phone, my 20-year-old granddaughter in Washington, D.C., whom I can't see because of COVID, and I haven't seen for more than a year, she was so articulate, and she's 12. I know there's Jana, who's 17. Let's go lower. I told her, you know, Samia, maybe I'll put you on the board at WAAS. Your ideas are great. She just thinks out of the box that we got stuck in, and we made so many mistakes. Why are we using happy hours and all these? Let's do something different. We want your innovation and your energy to come in and change us, not the other way around. Not change, we won't change. I mean, dinosaurs don't change. But you can enlighten us yes, I mean, if I need help with my laptop, I go to my 12-year-old, and she was helping since she was 6. She says, show me, what's your code? And I feel small, but that's it. We have a new generation with new capacities, and we don't necessarily want you to go into the mold, but we don't want you to sever either, because the problem with our day-to-day is we severed from our families, severed from our ancestries, severed from storytelling. I think why Facebook is successful with oldies and all the other aspects are good with youngies is the oldies still want to go into the old ways, and Facebook is very personal compared to LinkedIn, for instance, which is just about business. That's my CV, and I need a job. No. I mean, as you suggested, we need the personal. We need to care for each other and yet contribute. And what you will contribute is the humanity that we lost. What we contribute is what capitalism killed in us. What we will contribute is another way of looking at the world, because you are teaching us about technology, but you will teach us about many other things with respect to the dinosaurs. Never think that we have nothing to offer. But I mean, I learned a lot from Samia. I think you guys get ready. Samia in a year would be ready to join you. So that's all I can say.
Fadwa, it's both ways, is it?
It's both ways. No, you
It's
see, that's what
it's both ways.
Exactly. We have a lot to offer, but you're not allowing us to do storytelling. I tell my granddaughter, okay, let's just do this and this and this, and then we go. I said, no, wait. I tell you a story about my uncle and how he put a lit cigarette in his shark skin suit because his older brother was standing and he couldn't defy him. And the shark skin suit was getting burned, and I can smell it. I was 4-year-old then, the level of his pocket. And I could see the fire catching that man, but because of authority, he couldn't. So I wanted to tell my granddaughter that story. I said it with a lot of drama, as you see, and passion. She looked at me, she said, thank you, Siti. And she walked away. Okay, so yes, there's a lot to learn. And storytelling is one way of passing the information down. But now, we have precocious new generation that just blows my mind. They know so much. They are so articulate. Look at the way you guys presented the ideas. I was sitting there. I was listening to many other panels. They are boring as hell. And they just keep saying all these big words with no content. And we have to do this and we have to do that. Yeah, look at where we are today in the planet. So we are counting on you. And don't use old models, but don't leave us, because we have a lot to say through storytelling. Thomas, good to see you.
Well, yes, if I may, I'll just comment on that. And I agree with Stefan. I think it's both ways. Let's just agree that a mentorship program is a good idea, but we're not specifying who is actually mentoring whom in these relationships. Let's say it's mutual, because, I mean, Fadwa, I'm sure you will agree with me as a fellow professor that, you know, what gets us up in the morning, you know, and trotting off to university is the privilege of working with such wonderful, brilliant young people. That's really what makes our day, what keeps us going in often difficult circumstances in universities today. So I don't think any of us will argue with that qualification. When it comes to the proposal of having representation on the board or the executive or any other body within WAAS, that's a little bit more complicated. I think that's something we have to consider, because it requires constitutional change. You know, we have to change the bylaws of the academy in order to make that possible. And there are different options, and I think the board needs to discuss that. For example, should that person be a voting member or a non-voting member and things like that. There are compromises that are possible if there is a spectrum of opinions on this matter. Okay, so I think we should explore that, and perhaps we'll make that an item for the agenda of the next board meeting. And I'm very happy to join your meeting. You wanted to have a meeting to discuss proposals. I'm happy to join that, and you can run things by me. I can give you probably a fairly good idea of what is possible and what is likely to meet with some resistance. So,
well, Thomas, aren't you the representative of the youth programs or something like that? We just discussed
yes, that's right. The board appointed me to be the liaison with YLN. And thank you for reminding me, because YLN is an independent organization that is partnering with WAAS. We've just finalized our MOU, and it's a wider circle. You don't have to be a junior fellow to join, not at all. But there's a good chance that if you join, you're very active and you're a very bright young person, you might be recruited. Because, of course, we look at the people in YLN as candidates, young people who are engaged and active there. So it's also an approach, so that we can get to know you.
Can I add something?
And I'm addressing the audience in this particularly. You know all that, but.
Sure, Fadwa, you add a comment, and then after you, it's Luvuyo.
Okay, just to remind everybody that regardless of what we do, there is a cross-cultural component. There are cultures with their ways of doing things, and we have to accept that and encourage it. We don't want to homogenize the world. We don't want to homogenize youth. Look at all of you, what you represent, and we want to respect that. We want the best out of Egypt, the best out of the rest of Africa, the best out of Croatia. We want that. This is the key to respecting the world in its diversity, is to allow these differences to flourish while accepting we are one humankind. This is a scientific premise. I mean, I'm not adding anything, that we are one humankind. And Paul just told us that genetically and everything. We are one humankind. But we have all these diversities, beautiful diversities. And why do we want to homogenize them and use the American model of this or the European model? Africa has so much to offer. And Croatia, that's why I loved WAAS when we were going from country to country. It was lovely, it was exhausting. But, now we're zooming across time zones and pushing buttons to chat, but it's okay, we'll adjust. But I still like the person to person.
Thank you, Fadwa, very much. Luvuyo? Luvuyo, we can't hear you. Wait.
Yeah, I just realized that I was talking to myself. Thank you. So Fadwa, don't be concerned. It seems like us young people still have some issues with technology at times. But very quickly, and just trying to bring in a lot of the recommendations that were made by fellow panelists. To Fadwa's point and Jana's consideration, the irony is that, and again, without being controversial, that we younger people actually tend to understand communication far better than our older, wiser folk, because we just bring the conversation without legacy in consideration. I mean, if you look at the nature of this conversation and how it's unfolded versus very many board meetings and other conferences that I've been in, was recently tasked with the responsibility of having a youth summit on behalf of an equally international organization, and experience during the youth engagement versus the protocol that Thomas was speaking to, that sat in the other parallel conversations, sometimes tends to stifle the level of engagement, ingenuity, and everything else. So without sounding as though I am bad-mouthing, it's just to say we need to be conscious of what we're bringing to the table and bring that energy. And I think, to use Timur's analogy in the previous conversation, we've been given an opportunity to turn the tables. We've been given an opportunity to, like Sami suggested, show up as peers. So I think in the opportunities and the recommendations that were put forward, yes, the destination may be to be on the board and all the other formations, but I'll tell you, as a young person that's on a lot of these formations from my 9 to 5, it is not as glamorous as it sounds. It's protocol, it is bureaucratic, it is all these other things that dull the conversation. So the opportunity for us is influencing up, in fact. I look at YNL and YLN, excuse me, and how you put together the December content, right? Getting comments from each of us and putting together a video to start that up. How does that become more of an influence into WAAS and how it communicates its message? How do we repackage such conversations? I had asked Marta about the engagement that I unfortunately missed in December, and I had to sit through the hour conversation. You go onto other platforms and you can get snippets of the conversation. These were the pertinent points made by contributor X, Y, and Z. How, again, do we as this collective, to Sami's point around the publication, but also run the parallel digital opportunity that says advising on how best to package these digital communication pieces, and again, leverage that scalability of technology while bringing ourselves to the conversation and the institution. And to Fadwa's point, continuing to be conscious about the inclusive nature of these conversations and who else we're communicating to. We ourselves need to guard against the comfort that we will get in engaging with one another. And while it's great for us to be friends, we need to be careful not to be caught up in the intellectual aspect that these forums and formations tend to get us very excited and stuck in, and always mindful about how do you communicate this. So in South Africa, there's 11 official languages, and I always engage these conversations in thinking, when I go back home, which is what I did in December, to my village, how do I actually package this conversation and say, you know, the world at large cares about your reality on a day-to-day basis. I need your inputs at the village level to understand how I can push, prod, pull everyone at the international basis to bring those recommendations as quickly as possible. So simple things, taking this communication, shrinking it onto WhatsApp and sharing it to and disseminating it as a means not only to share the message, but to fit into that ambassador program and all those other recommendations that we put forward. I know that's a mouthful, but I think in everything that we've spoken to, from Carlo to Dora in the YLN movement, to Thibaut in the previous conversation, Sami, Jana, and Fadwa, along with Stefan and Thomas, I think we have the makings of something amazing here. The question is, how do we, to Sami's point, move from just ideas and actually make it actionable? And again, thank you, Marta, for putting together this panel and the hard work that I know you've done behind the scenes, and allowing us to have this conversation as freely as we have. Thank you.
That I think that previously we mentioned that we don't just need one-sided mentorship program. When we were discussing this idea first, it was more a space for, the idea was more to have a space for learning. It doesn't matter who comes to listen to these lectures or speeches or discussions, but we have to start from something. And this is not a critique to the youth saying that youth and junior fellows don't know anything, but it is an opportunity for everyone to learn topics that they're interested in. But on the other hand, it is also a critique to the youth, because youth doesn't just need to have opportunities. Youth needs to also invest effort. And having opportunities, job opportunities, study opportunities, internship opportunities is great, and we need that. But we mustn't put the focus off our own work and our own effort in continuous learning. Because when we start to enter the professional world, we tend to more orient ourselves towards finding job opportunities, developing maybe our different aspects of life. But we should also continue to have this in mind, that especially as part of the academy, we must continue this process and not be ashamed to call anyone, even our younger people than us, to call mentors. Mentorship is not a title that has to be related with age. It's actually it's related with knowledge and skills and expertise.
Yeah, Marta, I agree. And also the board stuff is really more admin. You might not be really interested in that. But what I feel might be interesting for you, normally you are studying something in very strict curriculums, right? And what you can learn at WAAS with regard to our curriculum is that most of the stuff we are discussing there is out of the box stuff. It's stuff you don't hear in your curriculum. So for example, if you go into pedagogic or education, or if you go into economics, the stuff you're hearing at WAAS is different. And it's good for you to be exposed to out of the box approaches, because we have the advantage because we're kind of senior fellows, we have the advantage just to go beyond the curriculum and to expose ideas you might be interested in. So this is one aspect. And the other, Marta, what you mentioned also, I find important is opportunity is one thing, and indeed you are the generation which the highest variety of opportunities, much more than my generation. But your challenge is coming up with the priority, with the selection out of the opportunities. What are you going to do with these opportunities? You cannot feed into all opportunities. You have to make a decision where to engage, what to learn, what are the skills, what is the stuff you want to move on. And this is your challenge. In my generation, it was nice just to have one or two opportunities. You have endless opportunities and you have to make decisions. And if you feel like being engaged in WAAS, I think it would be one aspect, if you get committed in some way or another in projects and in our activities, I think it can help advancing your career, but even more than that, it might also help advancing your personal development or your personal coherence. Because just getting a degree, and another degree, it's fine. But I think there's more than just a degree, right? And if you can get into understanding that it requires more than a degree just to be successful and accomplished in what you're doing, this might be also something you can see and learn through activities at WAAS. Yeah, Marta.
Thank you. Sami, yeah.
So Thomas had asked me in the chat about what it was like working with Winston, because Winston was my mentor for the 3 years that I was working as his research assistant. And I wanted to talk about that because that honestly, I think could be a good model for what we're talking about here. Obviously, I was constantly very humbled and felt very privileged to get to work with Winston. So there was, I don't want to call it a power dynamic because it really wasn't, but I was constantly aware of the privilege that I got to have as his assistant. But with that being said, it really was it never felt hierarchical. It always felt like an engagement between two equals. And that was very crucial for me being in, my late teens, early 20s, becoming an academic, if you will. That taught me so much about my own value as a scholar, not being attached to how many publications I have or how old I am or whatever. And I felt like my opinions were very valid. If I was editing one of Winston's papers and I had a problem with it, I would tell him and we would talk about it. And it was, like I said, it never felt like there was a certain power dynamic at work where I wasn't being valued. And so I was getting these opportunities for networking and professional development, but it happened in within this very, very egalitarian relationship. So Winston, if you're still watching, I really miss working for you.
Okay, thank you. Dora?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on Sammy comments. So just like Winston was your mentor, I have feeling like Gary Jacobs was my mentor when I lived with him in India for a couple of months, and he was helping me to write academic paper, and we had discussion about history, about life, about politics, about everything, and it was very intense few months when I learned so much. And I remember telling him after a couple of months, Gary, I learned more in this couple of months with you in India than in whole of my education, elementary school, high school, and my BA university life. So that experience was so impressive to me that I even right now I'm a student on my final year, and I'm specializing in India and contemporary India, politics, economics, culture, and everything. And everything that I gained, I still remember and I still apply in my life, and all of our conversations and knowledge that I gained. And I remember thinking a couple of times that I wish that more young people like me had a similar experience like that. Some older mentor, not a professor that is telling you, you have to learn this and this for the exam, but somebody who you can just share the knowledge, and you give some knowledge to them and they give some knowledge to you. And it's a wonderful way of growing as a person. So yeah, if we can make something like that in academy and with young fellows, that would be magical.
Yeah. Very good, very good.
Thanks. Jana, you're next.
Yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed hearing Dora and Sammy about your experiences with mentorship. I think, it can be a powerful tool for this mutual understanding. Kind of one idea I thought of as we were all speaking here together in this wonderful panel is that, there's, I think, a lot that we as junior fellows can do with WAAS to engage, a wider community of people. We obviously all come from around the world, and we all have kind of our each, separate communities that are distinct. But I'm kind of beginning to imagine what would happen if some of those communities merged a little, thanks to our kind of connections and relationships. And so I think even organizing an event sort of like this one, where can just be kind of on Zoom, and we invite and partner with various youth organizations that we're all a part of or that we have contacts to, and invite those young people to a conversation like this one. In a way, we are kind of, making this information and these discussions more accessible to them, but also challenging them to think about, like how can they become involved in a world, in the world in a way that eventually, sets up this pipeline for WAAS. And I think this would be, one incredible way to really make WAAS's presence felt around the world, just, through our own, just by leveraging our own connections and relationships. I also really loved the idea of a podcast. I think one idea for the podcast would be to make it be intergenerational conversations. So maybe it's a junior fellow and a senior fellow, and they're kind of discussing, one idea or topic together that they have synergies in. And I think that's yet another way to really share with the world what we're thinking about and some of the really important and necessary discussions we're having. So that's just, some thoughts for right now.
Very good. Very good.
Carlo?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say something about what Luvuyo mentioned earlier, because I think it's really a difficult task, but an important one when people go to those big conferences and those there's a lot of information that is being given to everybody, and it's really difficult then to summarize it in a very brief, concise message that everybody can understand and then that you can share with others. But I believe that we need to develop these capabilities, and I think that we are, as also Stefan said before, we have many opportunities. We have, in some cases, more capabilities of previous generations because we're involved in many more activities than before. the difficulty, I would say, today for youth, Stefan, where you said before it was like that one could, you know, have a start with a degree, complete it, and then have another one. Today, when you finish university, like myself, and this is, of course, my personal view, when you finally enter the true world, let's say, getting out of university, the world is really different from what you learn there. And many things you never address them, like how to communicate. Nobody tells you how you should present yourself, how you should sponsor yourself. And there's always this, not always, there's sometimes this fear, or this, this kind of fear to address, you know, senior members because they are important people. And there shouldn't be this this problem for us. I mean, it's many times it's just conversation, and we really appreciate when we can share stories or opinions with people who have addressed our same problems, dealt with the same problems, because I would say we're also a generation that has been raised with, let's say, we when growing up, we have always been given some kind of appreciation from our parents, from all the systems we've grown in, like giving medals or something. We are used to this, and it's difficult for us to be more resilient in some cases. And when we feel lost, it's a bit of a mess for us. But
yeah, it's very true. This is resilience and frustration tolerance. You know, COVID wiped you out of the labor market within a couple of weeks, an entire cohort, right? And former generations got wiped out by First World War, by Second World War, by whatever, you know, and gaining some sort of resilience and frustration tolerance, but still sticking your way and doing your stuff and be coherent with yourself beyond academics, right? This is what you should aim for, and this is what the whole story is all about, you know. Yeah.
Okay, Luvuyo, just let me read two comments that we received before you have the word. So the first one from Azita Berar. To have a real intergenerational dialogue, we need to have intergenerational panels on all thematic priorities in WAAS. And another one from Dina Dragia. We should appoint young ambassadors in underdeveloped communities that would present the current situation from the field directly to institutions as WAAS, UN, governments. Hire full-time young ambassadors to help the area with whom they're emotionally attached. Individuals born in underdeveloped areas who have had the opportunity to study abroad should get the chance to come back and help their societies by becoming ambassadors of their country as full-time employees, not as volunteers. So just, we have some, from, Luvuyo, please, and then we have 4 more minutes.
Very quick point. I think in a lot of the conversation, the opportunity is for us to use how we engage with WAAS to shape this very reality that we're speaking to. So to Carlo's point, and to bring in some of Jana's recommendation and Sami's point around mentorship, imagine reviewing that content, because each of these panels, these streams, are intended to be captured into a report that someone reads. But imagine reviewing these panels with a senior fellow and capturing them in a way that they never thought of initially. And that's what I mean by now looking at the digital aspect of it. And to the application process, I think the conversation was around collaborating for fundraising. And I think in shaping that type of relationship, to the point that Dora was making, how do we make that kind of engagement a fundable exercise with people who are giving of their skill sets to the benefit of the institution. So that's around the hybrid, that instead of always looking to create new, there's a body of information, a wealth of information on that website that needs to be repackaged. To everyone's point that's been made here. How do we make that a project and find the funding for it so the people who have the skill sets, the editing, the content production can be paid to do that work, but it's also done in a way that we start showing the value that we're bringing to the institution. And that's what I mean around a dynamic use of the recommendations that we've been putting forward in the discussion we've had today.
Sure, yes. Yeah, so please just after this panel, or when you have time the next few days, do be responsible for the ideas that you have proposed. So write them, send them to me or to the WAAS support or whoever you think it's suitable to send it to. And then let's make something of it. Let's create concrete projects and actually, you know, stick with it. Okay, one last comment. Anyone?
I mean, I can sort of start to close us off, but this has been so wonderful. And I really look forward to collaborating with, you know, all the panelists, but everyone is kind of engaged with this conversation and discussion for future projects. I think there's so much that we obviously bring to the table, and I'm excited to see where these different projects go. So look forward to collaborating with you all in the future.
And Marta, I would like to thank you for being a visitor to the panel or to discuss these topics with you. Don't let yourself down. Don't let yourself disencouraged by so-called, as you said, Carlo, authorities or whatever. Stick to your thoughts, stick to your mind, be clear about it. And I'm looking forward for a fruitful conversation and collaboration in the near future, and hope we can see each other at some point, not only digitally, but also in analog form, and then we can have a more intimate debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you everyone so much for participating and really, you know, participating with your heart. That's amazing. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for a perfect panel.
Thank you.